Hello everybody and welcome to the Human Echoes recap for Rick and Morty Season 3 Episode 4. This one's called Vindicators 3, Return of the Worldender. This is another Vindicators episode. I'm not gonna lie, I kinda didn't really remember the previous Vindicators episode. Once this one got going, I sort of had a little bit of an idea of what had happened in that one, but it had sort of slipped my mind. That's what you get for not going back and rewatching the whole series in preparation for doing these Season 3 recaps. But here we are, Rick is back, the Vindicators are calling, and they need his help. And they must need it pretty bad, because they, as we find out later, don't like him that much. Rick doesn't even want to answer, he doesn't even want to pick up the phone. He's not interested in anything these yahoos have to say. He's, busy with his own deal. He says to Morty, listen, we're not going to answer a literal call to adventure. To which Morty says, yeah, we are, and I'm going to play my actual trump card that you gave me, where I get to decide what we're going to do sometimes, once per season. So, Rick and Morty go and meet up with the Vindicators, who this time around consist of Maximus, Renegade, Star Soldier, Supernova, Million Ants, so I believe we're all in the previous episodes, and then we have Alan Rails, who has my favorite superpower of all the superpowers. I don't care what Rick says, I don't care how much he makes fun of it. The fact that this guy could blow a ghost whistle and summon a ghost train is the best. It's the best superpower. Like, you can solve all the problems in this episode with a ghost train. You got those laser pew-pew things that Rick took out? You could hit him with a ghost train. You got the Worldender guy? Hey, I don't know, but it seems like if you smacked a ghost train into him, he probably wouldn't be okay. You got Rick Sanchez setting up a neutrino bomb to blow up the whole planet? Hey, try running that thing over with a ghost train and see how it does. Ghost trains solve everything. Why is this guy even on a team? Ghost train man forever. That's my philosophy. Anyway, and then there's also Crockeybot, who is also just the best. I want to see a sci-fi original movie about this guy. Not this specific guy, okay? We don't have to get into copyright territory. I just want, like, a cyborg crocodile with robot pieces. That's awesome. I want that. And we find out in the course of this little briefing that the Vindicators have had a chance to work with Rick and Morty once in the past, and they passed up on it. And Morty figures out that the reason that they didn't want to work with them was because Rick is such an a-hole. They're not really into that. The personality just clashes with them. And I think it's really an interesting thing to set up here. I mean, we already understand that Rick pushes people away, but the fact that these people who are ostensibly trying to save the universe, right? They're in their eyes at least, they're going up against existential threats to everything. And they had a guy who could definitely help them out, right? Rick Sanchez, for whatever his faults are, 100% that this guy is gonna probably get some business done. But they didn't call him because that's how acerbic and annoying and just irritating he is. They would rather let the universe explode than work with Rick Sanchez again. That says a lot. That says a lot about Rick, and I think it says a lot about sort of where his character goes with the people that he deals with. I mean, Morty is getting there as well, where he's had enough of Rick's crap. He wants to go off and hang out with other people, have different adventures, not Rick and Morty adventures. And he says as much to Rick. And Rick is legitimately hurt by this, as we find out, because he goes off on a bender, like starts drinking, and really out of jealousy and anger and maybe the need not to lose Morty to these people, he sets up this Saw-style trap contraption, kills off Worldender right off the bat just so he can look cool, and plots to kill these guys off through the power of cynicism and lots of gore. I think that this says a lot about Rick, that he can't process these kinds of things. He can't just talk to Morty about it. He can't just tell him, listen, I'm jealous, I'm mad. He has to go through and be grandiose and huge, and it's really sad. I mean, Rick Sanchez ultimately is a sad character. Of course, they do go through all the stuff. We get one glimpse of Ghost Train, which was awesome. I mean, it punches a giant hole in the wall. I don't know how far the hole went. I don't know how long Ghost Train stays material. There's a lot of Ghost Train related questions I have about this episode. I realize that's not what the episode's about, but I have those questions anyway. We're not going to get the answers, obviously, because Ghost Train Man get killed, but I want to know the answers. They get in there, they find out that Rick has set this whole thing up, and Morty is just walking through it like it's a cakewalk. Not because he's super smart, but because he's become so immune to Rick's nonsense, right? Rick's cynicism. He understands how Rick's mind works and the negativity and the sort of just hate that Rick has for everything that is not him. And again, some of it turns out to be true, right? Like the Vindicators aren't perfect and beautiful angels of goodness. They clearly have a lot of problems. They're stuck on their own star power to a certain extent. No pun intended for Supernova, but they think that they're doing quote unquote the right thing and that the ends justify that. We find out that they wiped out an entire world just so they could get at this Worldender guy who, as we find out, they didn't even kill. Like, that's how Vindicators without Rick goes. They wipe out an entire planet and still don't get the man that they're after. But I think even so, even with Rick being correct in all the stuff that he said to Morty, Morty still isn't interested in Rick's nonsense anymore. He wants some glimmer of hope. He wants to be fed a line occasionally about how things can be good, how that positive things can happen, and he's really turning against Rick. There's a weird sort of opposite directions thing here where Rick is kind of grasping at straws to not get Morty back, but to eliminate any competition for Morty, whereas Morty is drifting further and further away from Rick emotionally. And he figures out all these puzzles. He figures out Israel after the wrong answer of the planet that they blew up by accident. And even as easy as all these things are, like these idiot Vindicators keep getting themselves killed off. Poor Crockeybot. That was my least favorite death. Like, Maximus, Renegade, you deserve what you got. Like, Rick told you it was booby-trapped, right? And all the other guys, like, you're infighting and personal idiocy. That was your downfall, but poor Crockeybot. It shouldn't have ended like that. It shouldn't have ended like that, man. Anyway, they move on. They find all of these traps. Eventually, they get to the final one, and Rick says, "Put the only thing that I value about the Vindicators. If you can find that, put it on this pedestal, and that'll stop this neutrino bomb from going off." Morty's first guess is a good one. He says, I think it's nothing. I think you just leave that empty and everything will be okay. But then he talks himself into believing that maybe it's him. He steps onto the pedestal. The pedestal accepts him stepping on, and he sees this montage of screens of Rick telling him that he's, how important he is to him and how valuable his help is and all this stuff. And he's riding on this little train car through this whole montage Rick has set up, and he gets to the end, and the reveal is that it's not for him. It's for this other ancillary character that showed up for like a scene and a half and just laughed at all of Rick's jokes, called Noob Noob. And Noob Noob, or whatever this guy's name is, he strikes me as the kind of character that's going to end up coming back later as like I was the villain the whole time and now you've taken out the Vindicators and Worldender for me, and sort of bite Rick in the butt. But in this context, I think it says a lot that what Rick is looking for, the thing that Rick really wants, that he wants out of his companions, for lack of a better word, if we use a Doctor Who terminology, is just somebody who is amazed at his shenanigans and like really thinks he's the best, who laughs at all of his jokes, who's awed at the cool things that he can do. And maybe that's why the Doctor changes companions every 2 or 3 years, because they start catching on to his nonsense. That's a dark thought. Anyway, let's keep talking about Rick and Morty. You know, the fact that he's looking for a yes man is interesting. There's also the fact, and a lot of people have pointed out, Rick thought by this point that he was going to be out of here, and I assume he was going to take Morty with him. I hope that I'm correct, that he wasn't just going to leave Morty here to deal with this stuff and also like punch him in the face with, oh, you're not even my favorite thing about the Vindicators. I like Noob Noob better. Maybe he was planning on taking Morty with him with his portal gun, but he lost the portal gun. Noob Noob didn't get taken, and the people analyzing this said either Morty is the same weight as Noob Noob, which would maybe make sense, or that he was wearing Noob Noob's jacket and that's how the thing activated. I don't know. I don't know how Rick set this thing up, or whether maybe it was meant to be a slap in the face to Morty. There's a lot of ways you could break this down. Dan Harmon, previous to this episode, said it was his least favorite of the series, or of the season anyway, and it's interesting to think about. There's still a lot here to unpack, and I think it's still a good episode. I wonder what his reasoning as a writer for having that sentiment was. I do think that it's not quite as strong as the other things that we've seen, that some of it's old ground with Rick, really. We've really honestly seen him be cynical and look down his nose at everybody, and I get that that's what the strength of the show is, but I think it helps him. We can go in new directions, and the person who's really going in new directions in this episode is Morty. Morty is really showing Rick how jaded he's become to all of this, and some people have hypothesized that maybe we're seeing the beginning of this Morty turning into evil Morty. I don't know how that would work, if we would end up having time travel in the show finally, or what, but I could see that arc maybe happening, where he just becomes so disillusioned with Rick that he realizes he can go off on his own and do his own thing, and that, like, it won't matter. Nothing matters because the universe is meaningless and Rick doesn't care about anybody, and nobody cares about anybody, and everybody sucks, so why care? I think that's where Morty's going, and it's kind of a bummer. It's not what I want to see. But, I mean, it might be what I want to see. We'll find out, I guess, going forward. I think it's very telling that in the next episode promo, we see that Rick goes to get Jerry because he needs somebody to be amazed or surprised or something about his shenanigans. And he's lost that in Morty. And Beth and Summer aren't even, like, they come to his party that he's arranged at the end of his little Saw trap course, which I think maybe Jigsaw should probably set up some refreshments for the people who make it out alive. At least Rick is nice enough to do that, right? Like just some Kool-Aid, maybe some cookies or whatever. I'm just saying, think about it, Jigsaw. But they come to this place on an alien planet where Rick has arranged for Logic to be a rapper, and all of these weird alien species that he knows are just gathered together around with him, and they are completely unfazed. They're not impressed. They're not really annoyed. They're just there. And Rick needs somebody to bounce off of. And so he's going to go to Jerry. I don't know how that's going to work out for him, but I'm interested to see. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this episode, click that like button, subscribe. There's a lot of awesome stuff on this channel that's not this. I hope you guys are as excited as I am to see what happens with Rick and Morty going forward. I really think that we're going to some dark places, and not just because the writers have said this is the darkest season ever, but also because we're obviously going to some dark places, guys. Stay tuned for that. We'll see you guys next week with another episode of the Rick and Morty Recap. Take care.